Good morning, my friends. I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're going to be learning the 10th chapter. It's the third to last chapter of the laws of idol worship, where we're going to be learning all about how we're not allowed to have any idol worshippers in our midst, specifically in the land of Israel, and therefore we should not have them buying our houses, etc., and coming to live amongst us, so that we shouldn't learn from the ways of idol worship. So the Rambam begins by saying that we do not draw up a covenant and a peace treaty with the 7 nations which God told us that we, coming into the land of Israel, those nations were to be destroyed and not let to be living in Israel, because those nations were the symbol for idol worship. And as it says in the Torah, do not establish a covenant with them. Rather, they must renounce their idolatry if they wanted to live over there. And if not, then they would go to war against them. So that's a very clear mitzvah in the Torah. So much so that if a person sees that there is an idolater who is drowning, etc., and this is a person who is not renouncing his idolatry and so on, so then you do not have to go and save them, because since they are not allowed to be living in the land of Israel anyhow, as the Torah says, so therefore you do not have a mitzvah to save that person. And from here we learn, the Rambam says, that when we're talking about a doctor, for instance, someone who is treating people, making them healthy. So if we have an idolater, so then, technically speaking, you shouldn't be healing them. But we still find that obviously doctors are doing their job and they're healing everyone. So if they're getting paid for it, so then it's okay. In order to have peace amongst the world, so therefore it's fine. But to go and sell them houses in the land of Israel and have them settle amongst us, and especially to create a neighborhood which is going to be a place of idolatry, that is something which is not allowed, and therefore we're not allowed to do that. But if it's outside of the land of Israel, just anywhere, so then that will be okay, because it's not our land, and it will be fine. And then there's an area called Syria. It's called Syria, which is pretty much the area of Syria. And over there, it wasn't Israel fully, but on the other hand, it wasn't just like the rest of the world, because there was a lot of Jewish people living there. It was under Jewish leadership. And so the Rambam says that in that area, you're allowed to let them live there, and you're allowed to rent them houses and fields, but you should not sell it to them. And even if you are renting them a house, you shouldn't let them live there if they're bringing in over their idolatry, but rather to use it as a storehouse or something like that, so then that will be okay. And the basic concept over here is that we should not have idolatry in our midst. That's the core of the issue. And therefore the Torah is going into and putting various boundaries, so to speak, into place, telling us that if you're going to do these things, so then you're going to have idolatry in our midst, in the land of Israel specifically. So therefore, don't sell them a house, don't sell them fields, don't let them settle in the land. If, for instance, there's another law which the Rambam talks about over here, that we're not allowed to say, oh wow, how beautiful is this idol. That's something which we shouldn't do, because if we start looking at the idols and start saying how beautiful they are and thinking about it, it's going to bring us to feel closer to it. So that's something which we shouldn't do, and we should not connect ourselves to idolatry. When we're talking about giving charity, So here the Rambam continues and discusses the idea, if we do have, we have poor people, Jewish poor people and non-Jewish poor people. So the Rambam says that for the sake of peace, so we give tzedakah to everyone, and to Jewish poor people and to non-Jewish poor people, even if they are idolaters, we still give them charity. And if they come and there is a law where we have to leave an extra part of the field of some of the extra stock that grew, and we should let it there for the poor people, they are also allowed to come in and join and take, and we wish them good morning and so on. And if it's if it's a pagan holiday, it's a holiday of idol worship, so you're allowed to tell them hi, but it should be in a more serious tone, not in a festive tone, which would be saying them good morning in a special way for their holiday. That's something which we shouldn't do. So when we're living outside of Israel, and we're surrounded by non-Jewish people, so that's definitely the way we should live our life, where we should be kind and interact with other people around us in a nice, positive way. But if we're in the land of Israel and it's under our jurisdiction, so then we should, as much as we can, we should not have any idolaters and any idol worshipping taking place in the land of Israel under the leadership, so to speak, of Judaism, which is the fundamental of belief in one God, is so important. And if a person wants to live there, they're allowed to, even if they're not Jewish. That's totally fine, as long as they follow the 7 Noahide laws. The Rambam says very clearly, if they follow the 7 Noah laws, starting from the fundamental of belief in God, and not killing, not stealing, etc., so then they can live there. That's totally fine. But if they don't want to take upon themselves to follow these laws, starting with the belief in God, so then we should not let them live in the land of Israel. And that's pretty much the chapter for today. It's really short, and we are really getting a strong dose of this sense and this foundation, really, in Judaism, where we're seeing time and time again over here throughout these chapters of the laws of idol worship, where the Rambam is telling us, and this is from the Torah, these are from, everything is being based over here on verses of the Torah, very clearly what God has told us in the way we're supposed to live our lives, that idolatry is something which is so out of the question that we have to distance ourselves from it as far and as much as possible. And we should never put ourselves into a situation where we're going to have to interact with it and want to show interest in it, and therefore we shouldn't study about it into the details of how it works, and we shouldn't like it, we shouldn't want it. And this is because it's so important. The idea of belief in God is such an important fundamental in our belief system, in everything, in our whole life. Everything is dependent on this foundation. We believe in God, and therefore we have all the commandments that God tells us to do, and therefore we have a moral compass. We are going to be able to know how to live our life in a positive way. And if we don't have that moral compass, that ethical path, which the Torah clearly spells out for us, what is the correct way for us to live our life? Well then, today we're going to think one way, tomorrow we're going to start serving one idol, the next day we're going to serve another idol, and who knows what's going to be the end, where is it going to bring us? So when we're looking at these laws of idol worship. So we're talking about many different details and many different things, a lot of them which are not so practical in our day-to-day life. But I would say, and as we spoke about this a few days ago, the idea is we have to realize this is the fundamental of what it's all about. This is the fundamental of our entire belief. And our whole life really is surrounding around this central theme of God. Because God created us, He created us for a purpose, and He brought us and He created us in this world so that we, with a certain goal, we're not just here for fun, but rather we're here to serve God. And ultimately, that is going to be the core of our life. And in order to be able to do that, we're not able to serve idols, because that's taking away from our belief and the oneness of God. So that's why it's such a strong fundamental and so strict in regards to these laws, and we have to follow them to the T. But that's just a little thought on the idea of belief in God versus idol worship. And we should all strengthen our belief in God by studying. When we study these laws, it should bring us to make our belief in God to be concrete and steadfast and unshakable. And we have to study about God. We have to get involved in contemplating about God, and ultimately bringing ourselves to really know and believe that God exists. And that's what it's all about. So l'chaim, my friends. We should all take it to heart, and we should all bring it into practice. L'chaim. Have a very good day. We will see you tomorrow.